G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Off Ukraine War update for the 17th of October 2025. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate. Now, Ukraine, of course, has made a number of ludicrous statements over the years, but none more than, we are not losing to Russia. Well, yesterday at Munich, Zelensky made a fool of himself. Of course, he got what he wanted, 4.4 million rounds of ammunition. This is not a man looking for peace. And of course, he has demanded Ukraine be given more aid and also that Russians be expelled, right? And of course, he has been told by Donald Trump to resolve the situation in Ukraine. Trump was not pleasant. And why should he? Ukraine's leader, the self-anointed election phobe, is, of course, a pathetic loser who just won't go away. He's a pathetic parasite who we already have enough parasites in this world. We cannot save them, nor should we. But why should Europe expel Russians and not Ukrainians? Ukraine has lots of space. Africa has lots of space. Go to Africa, right? No, Zelensky, of course, can be as rude and as obnoxious as he wants to be because the European leaders just ho 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 ho, and in their little chuckles, stick it to America and continue this ludicrous war. Now, of course, Russia obliges Ukraine with a generous helping of drone strikes, a sprinkling of missile strikes, and a generous helping of punches to the face. Now, most of these do not result in anything of consequence, though there has been a little movement in Kupiansk. In some areas there's nothing, but the offensive towards Lyman has heated up and continues, although it's hard to say, but they're still actually fighting at the military base in front of Lyman, and they're actually in the base. They are overwhelming the first, but not the second and third line of defenses outside of Lyman. But they have taken down some Ukrainian positions, 2 drone launch points, a couple of rocket launchers, but nothing of consequence. The Ukrainians, of course, are denying they're losing. They're just repositioning. Yes, just like the Germans repositioned from Moscow to Berlin. So we have the offensives here. Not just the offensive at Lyman, we have offensive actions all across the front. As you know, Seversk held on for a while. Parts of the front have chopped and changed a little bit. There's been a little movement to these lines, but not much. But it's mostly just the way they redraw the lines every so often. They did this here. They redrew the lines here every so often, but every so often, the Russians do reclaim positions they've given up, right? There's been no battle, right? The Russians are just secure in where they are rather than pushing forward. But it's generally believed that sometime this week, they will launch another offensive into Koshtanovka. Don't make me say that again. But here we go. There's barely any movement, but the Russians have actually creeped up, and there's been no response from Ukraine other than a few attacks on the flank. But yeah, the Russians have tested the waters here. They've creeped it right up onto, and they're at the village between Kostanovika. Oh, geez, she did make me say that twice. And the Russian lines, but nothing has happened, right? Though there are thousands of defenders in the city, waiting. Mostly the weather is and visibility is too poor, and the Ukrainians know that they're not going to fall for the Russians' trick twice, where actually the Russians, third time, the Russians snuck into Pavlovsk. Remember, the Russians snuck in under the cover of winter, right? Winter storms. They have snuck into Pavlovsk. They secured positions there. They snuck into Hulipol and actually got the Ukrainians to retreat by screaming the Russians are coming, and they're from all directions. Only 3 Russians did it, by the way, but they screamed a couple of times in panic, the Russians are coming, and the Ukrainians did Scarpa, right? But the Ukrainian commanders made them go back and actually fight the Russians. I am of the opinion that Ukrainians surrendering, of course, they have been treated with dignity. That is a legitimate action against Zelensky rather than fighting. A lot of people, however, just refuse to fight. Ukraine, of course, Russia's not pressing them because they do fight back. But yes, Ukraine is having troubles. They cannot launch offensives. And so the Russian army are deciding how the peace talks are going to end, or if they end this week or not. But it also depends on Ukraine. But Russia's using this opportunity to rather pressure Ukraine with missiles and drones, take a few key positions where they can, because in some areas the Russians are facing opposition. They are facing opposition at Zelensky and Radinsky, and of course the Ukrainians keep coming to the Pavlovsk train station for a beating, and the Russians are saying, if you want one, we are happy to beat you in the face. But other than that, there's the usual suspects. They are slowly pushing north here, but it's just slow, right? And they are stalled, pushing outwards because they're more going west than north, right? They only push through a few places. They're still pushing on here. They have taken some blocks over the last couple of weeks, but taking a few blocks, I mean, geez, more Ukrainians died of frostbite than fighting up here. But fighting here is resumed over the phony airbase. Village turned into airbase. That was an operations for a while, but has been shut down. Nice straight roads now have a nice straight line for Russian artillery. Now they are pushing here, but really that's probably clearly the amount of offensive actions showing that Russia really wants to circle around and take control of the situation here, but they have made very little progress. Now, of course, where they've made almost no progress is Zulapol. They've only enabled to encircle and overrun some positions here in the western part of Hulipol, but that's about it. They are, of course, oddly enough, around them, fighting here with the Ukrainians still at their backs. You think they would but they need to, fight on, and clearly it's a straight line run push, straight through here, 1, 2, 3, hopefully destroying the Ukrainian positions. That's the idea. While the artillery actually fires over, trying to cut off reinforcements and resupply. Now, of course, in other areas, they are just, the Russia's pushing out, and it's just, rather than pushing up, they are pushing out. So, really, this is forming a cauldron that is going to 1, 2, 3, and this could be, right, part of the general push, right? You can see a possibility that Russia is racing to control this river as well. And it's if the war ends, I mean, if Zelensky strokes a pen, he does effectively freeze the front line. though the effective orders would take around 48 hours. But generally, the Russians have prepared, by the looks of it, to begin to shape borders. Right, you look here, right, along the river, right, you would think, right, along here, up here. But this is where it gets tricky, is will they give up the part of the buffer zone? But Zelensky says, no, any land you haven't captured. So this arguments over where the border is, what is actually where the, and Zelensky, of course, wants pre-1991 borders, like, while the moderates are trying to get the Russians to freeze the front. But the Russians have made it clear, while Zelensky attacks Russian gas and oil, Russia will continue to take land off the Ukrainians, and sooner or later someone, right, whether it's the head of UGAS or well, there's 17 gas and oil companies allegedly in Ukraine. One of them's got to realise that there's no coming back from the Ukraine war, right? But, you know, here's the strange part. I thought, and I clearly reported a few times, that the Ukraine has turned off the pipelines, right? And Russia has stopped pipelining to gas and oil to Ukraine. Well, apparently, humanitarian supplies were not cut off, and there's still gas and oil flowing to Hungary. Now, Ukraine, of course, gets a small cut of that, and they've been using that to buy arms and munitions, and they're also been siphoning off gas. But neither here nor there. A lot of the talks, right, a lot of the Ukrainian gas and oil companies, you think, you know, they would pressure Ukraine to end this war because they're losing money. Or a lot of companies in Ukraine are losing money now. But Zelensky is just promising that, you hear all the time, right, that, Russia jails people for speaking out against the Ukraine war. That is mostly true. There are people who have been jailed, but a lot of them have not expressed a desire to end the war. They have openly criticised the war. But don't forget, Ukraine has jailed opposition to the Ukraine war as pro-Russian, right? Anybody who speaks out in Ukraine goes to jail. But no, the West won't call out Ukraine. And again, they also won't point out the fact that this is not Ukrainian artillery. This is French artillery, right, in Ukraine. And a lot of speculation is France, right, is wanting their equipment back. They're going broke, right? And apparently Ukraine will not commit to returning any of the equipment after the war. So there's a lot of stupidity, right? When it comes to Ukraine, you're suckers, right? You should expel all Ukrainians. Boom, right? Fuck him, right? Zelensky wants to play fucking games. Fuck him, right? And I'm not going to apologize for profanity. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to take Ukraine's side, right? I'm not going to take sides, but especially Ukraine's side when constantly they lie about the analysis on the battlefield, right? Now, yes, so what if Russia took advantage of Starlink's Starlink? You know, Ukraine took advantage of British shipping to bring in weapons, right? Because they knew if the Russians attacked the ship, the Europeans would attack Russia, right? Ukraine has believed that they have to attack the more Russian gas and oil. It'll bring about an end of the war. They want more long-range drones. They attacked Russia with long-range drones. Russia has responded, of course, with more drone attacks. And also, it's official, Pavoka and Minoka are now officially Russian, according to state media, right? That they have expanded their territorial hold on eastern Ukraine. Now, if Al Jazeera is reporting it, there's of course, shouldn't come as a shock to you. The Russians have had Pavlovka for some time now, right? But Ukraine has withdrawn from the outskirts of Pavlovka, but they have attacked it a couple of times. They just can't crack the Russian nut. They can't get out of. They can't break through. They can't even occupy the rail yard for more than a few hours without dying, right? The Russians have pretty much just caught them in crossfire time and time again. Even as they come across the river, they're already in range of Russian rocket artillery. The Russians just keep slaughtering them. Like, they're spawn camping. Okay, they're spawn camping the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians, like lemmings, keep coming out at the same spot. Now, the Russian have reported attacks on their ports and admitted their ports were damaged, but you don't get Ukraine admitting anything, right? So Ukraine has received 4.4 million rounds of ammunition from Czech's arms producer with money from foreign donors. So, yeah. So all you suckers out there who claim to be anti-war, you're funding war, you're funding slaughter, and I hope no one has mercy on you for continuing this slaughter. Now, of course, everybody's going to go, but Russia's the aggressor, they just have to withdraw and everything's fine. No, it's not. You don't get to attack Russia's economy, destroy and kill millions of Russians, and then go, we're not the bad guys, right? You slaughtered ethnic Russians in Ukraine. You have no morals. You refuse to admit to your war crimes, and you aided Ukraine in your war crimes, and the Obamas just sit there and laugh because no one will take an American president out and have him shot for their war crimes, right? Except, Democrats who commit war crimes always want to kill Trump, and they're going to pay the consequences for trying again. And apparently, soon we'll hear about, probably the case is wrapping up soon, but the Ukrainian connection, of course, has not been brought up. But how many of these, 2 troons and a Ukrainian recruiter, right? And they're all linked to the same recruitment service for Ukraine. I mean, come on. Ukraine obviously put pressure on Trump, believing Trump's a Russian agent, and Zelensky thinks, no, he sent a clear message to Trump. No, this is all stop helping Putin. But that's all going to change very soon. Trump is no fool, but he is playing his cards very carefully, very precisely, very slowly, very deliberately, right? All these people screaming about Zelensky, not getting respect. Well, fuck Zelensky, right? Right? You all ignoring Ukraine was the center of trafficking for Epstein and others, right? That Ukraine is a big cesspool of corruption. You're ignoring the ethnic cleansing that Ukraine engaged in since 2014. And Russia, of course, is negotiating with America a broad range of issues, including questions about territory, right, and everything else related to their demands, right, thinking that it's this negotiation, they've given enough to Ukraine, right, that you want Eastern Ukraine, it's your problem, right, it's your responsibility. Now, Marco Rubio has believed that US peace efforts in Ukraine will continue. Budapest is still open to holding a peace summit, right? And this is Hungarian Prime Minister assured the US Secretary that his country still backs their peace efforts, and that Budapest will also, continue hosting a peace summit. But ultimately, right, they've chosen this time again for the third attempt in Geneva, right, to go ahead. And the problem is that Zelensky won't show up, right? and we'll get to that a little bit later. But remember, Hungary and Slovakia have asked Croatia to secure more Russian oil, because Ukraine is their end, again, disrupted supplies, right? They have an exemption from the European Union because their entire infrastructure, right, is around this Russian pipeline, right, that comes through Ukraine. You can't just put different gas or different oil, right, because gas is a certain temperature and a certain pressure, and you can't just transfer one to the other, right? If you've got a different system, right, when you transfer gas, right, if you have bottled gas, right, and someone comes along and says, oh, we got liquefied gas, right, you can't put the two in, right? You can't say, oh, we'll just connect our bottles, right? They have different connectors for a reason, so you can't accidentally because when you connect liquid gas to a solid gas, not a solid gas line, a pumped gas flow, right? That gas just quickly expands through the system and freezes it because it's a different pressure, and the pressure differentiation creates basically sucks all the heat out of the system, freezes. It's a disaster. It's the same with crude oil, right? Different crude oil, right? You can't just take crude oil of a certain viscosity or a certain, black tar crude, and you can't replace it with light brown crude, right? You boil it away, right? If you have a heavy crude oil processing plant, it needs heavy crude oil, or you have to retool your entire plant because it boils. Says you put light oil into a black tar processor, right? The light crude just boil away, and all you get is propane. You just boiled away all your oil, right? You can't thicken, right? Well, maybe you can. You can pressure cook oil, of course. Pressurize oil, but you can't recreate just overnight, right? Takes a lot of processing to change oil types, right? You have to change the thickness and diameter of the pipes. You have to change all the temperature controls. You have to change all the pressure valves. You have to the pressure settings, on the valves. You can keep most of the valves, other than the backflow valves, because you got to deal with gas. You need a tighter. You have to be able to literally gas seal a light gas and this, of course, is more money than Hungary's gotten, and you can't do it temporarily. It has to be permanent, right? You can't just switch. And yet people seem to think, right? Again, they know everything, right? They don't know anything, right? This is the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people who squawk from the sidelines think they know everything, right? They think that everything just happens because they demand it, right? Just because you have the right to protest doesn't mean you have the right to be believed, right? Just because you protest doesn't mean you have the right to demand that other countries do as you please, right? You are not you're not Hungary, right? You're not the president of Hungary. Liberals complain about Russian interference, yet American liberals and European liberals always interfere with the affairs of others, right? But Russian oil producers have cut and will be are under pressure to cut. All right, the U.S. has put restrictions on Moscow's exports. Now, this, of course, is part of the economic war, economic pressure by Trump too, right? And the Europeans are saying, no, we're also doing it. Don't forget, we're doing it. And everybody's saying, you're insignificant, right? You are insignificant, right? But France has granted asylum to an anti-criminal activist couple who were detained by U.S. law enforcement for overstaying their visa. After several talks, right, they have found someone to host them. Now, I do not understand why they haven't been processed by asylum seekers by the US, but apparently they didn't meet the criteria in the United States, and I think this is deliberate. Right? I think they were. I think they illegally overstayed their visa in the United States and never applied for asylum on purpose to get attention, right? And America is punishing them by sending them to France. I think that is worse than sending them back to Russia. So Russian troops, again, as I said, they have inflicted casualties, not many, on the Ukrainians as they advance. And again, as I said, the Russian forces are, and here they are training in a training operation, sneaking up on the Ukrainian positions in the snow. They've done this before. This is probably a previous photo from previous operations where they have snuck up on the Ukrainian positions under the cover of darkness and fog in camouflage suits, and they have effectively seized this in Lyman, positions in Lyman, but in other areas such as Konstantinovia and Hulipol, they have not been able to achieve this similar success. Of course, that's because the Ukrainians just don't want to wake up with a Russian knife in their throat. Who knew? Right? Who knew? I think a lot of people are allergic to waking up to a knife in their throat. I think a lot of people were allergic to that. Now, of course, Russia has, in the last 24 hours, inflicted over 1,000 casualties on Ukraine. I said thousands by mistake, over 1,000, I meant to say. But yeah, it's close to 2,000 casualties. Again, casualties does not mean all dead. So for some reason, when we go through a lot of these reports, you'll actually find Zelensky reports exactly the same number of dead Russians, although he usually does it monthly, so you don't immediately catch on that this is exactly what he's doing. You know, so if Zelensky announces next at the end of the month that he's killed 33,000 Russians, you know he actually meant that Russia declared that they have injured, killed, wounded, or captured 33,000 Ukrainians. Now, here's the thing. There are body handovers all the time. Russia has not kept that many Ukrainian POWs, and Russia has more Ukraine has more Russian POWs than Ukraine. So right now we have 4,000 Ukrainians in captivity, according to the Red Cross in Russia, and they said they are kept in very good conditions. They kept in cells, pretty much like a modern prison, and they said the same that Russians in Ukraine are kept mostly in a similar in a jail under similar circumstances, and they have about 7,000 Russians in captivity. Now, there has been several handovers, and there has been some Ukrainians sent into exile rather than being returned to Ukraine. Some foreign mercenaries. A fate is unknown of the dozens of foreign mercenaries, though it's believed Australia was able to secure one of the mercenaries released. That was a prisoner exchange. There have been several organisations who are trying to now get prisoner exchanges as well for some Colombians. Again, you know, there are foreign nationals around the world. There are even Russians around the world, and some Russian spies that even UK has offered up to try and get some of their boys out. But so far, not many exchanges have gone on, and not all of them have been publicised. The Kremlin has refused to talk about the fate of some mercenaries, so it looks on the surface to be bad, but I think we'll find out more as the war comes to an end, that some of them have been sentenced to long prison time, but then suddenly they get their time reduced, and Russia gets what they want. So it's Putin plays hardball, and you know, as they say, prison in Ukraine is retirement. You know, it's a holiday home compared to Russian prison. So Zelensky, of course, has gone on a profane rant about the fact that Western Europe will not expel any Russian citizens, including students. That speaking to Politico, of course, in Munich, rather than And of course, what happened? Well, Trump picked up the phone and says, "You're supposed to be in Munich right now. No, sorry, you're supposed to be in Geneva right now. Get your fucking ass over there." Right? And yes, there was a round of talks today, but it was where is the little parasite? Now, Donald Trump said it's time for Ukraine to quickly come to the negotiating table to resolve the conflict. Right? They better come to the table fast. That's all I'm telling you. Air Force One is on the move again. I don't blame him. He knows pretty much he has Iran, he has Ukrainians, and many others who want to play tag. And right now, you F around and you find out. You do not want to anger the beast, right? He is definitely an alpha dog who is very happy to teach you a lesson or two. And he says the Ukrainian settlement is in Geneva is significant. Talks will be very easy. There's only one topic, right? You're going to sign this deal or not, right? There's no more negotiations, right? You know, where there's lines drawn on a map, they are pushing. Like I said, behind the scenes, you have experts who are pushing details on prisoner exchanges, a timeline for disarmament. As always, end of war, you have to roll up all these excessive arms that Ukraine has scattered around the place. You got to cover up all your crimes, pave them over, make it look good for the cameras. You got to admit, Russia hasn't done that much damage to Ukraine. Only 800-something billion in damages, and Ukraine is not going to see a penny of that. And that's why they keep lashing out, because they want to destroy the Russian economy, and because their own economy is beyond repair. They have to. Now, of course, that's not entirely true. They're still an agricultural economy. They just have to deal with a fungi problem, which of course is down to negligence, right? Ukraine has been negligent in their cleaning. They have not kept their farm equipment clean. They have not kept their end of the bargain with Europe on not just cleanliness, but general maintenance and general standards. A lot of the communities, of course, just lack the fundamental steam cleaning equipment necessary to keep the... Because you can't keep using chemical washers, right? The European standards, right? This is the problem. Ukraine, they'd rather bleach everything and just once a month rather than, keep everything clean and every day. The general lack of standards, the general lack of morals, the general lack of common sense, right? When it comes to food, right, you have to be clean from the time you plant the seeds, right? You can't allow fungus to grow, right? You have to. Fungus loves wheat. Okay, the Ukrainian wheat fields, if they don't clean it up, will soon be totally infested. They will not be able to cover this up, right? Poland has already accused them of producing, fungus bread, right? Where they grab instead of selling the wheat or flour, they sell the bread, and the bread, they crack open the bread, and Eastern Europe, they love their grainy bread, right? They love it. That's fine, but they love to break open the bread, and the last thing you want to do is when you break open a bread, see a nice purple stain staring at you, like it's like a dick pic, you open your email and there's a nice big dick pic, it's the same thing. You don't want to see some blue muffins, right? And of course that's the thing, right? This fungus is not it's not exactly deadly to humans, but it gives you a range of infections that come out and come out through your skin. You're going to get rashes in the armpits, in your groin, behind the knees. You're going to have swollen. You're going to have swollen joints, and you're going to have swollen nodes in your neck. You're going to have headaches, fevers. Bad bread is bad bread, right? And Poles have also sick of Ukrainians not paying their bills, right? And Russians have most of the Russians, I would believe, in Europe right now are not pro-Putin, right? They're allowed to, right, be left-wing Russians, right? You can't choose where you're born, right? And Zelensky can go, pound sand. I think he's a dead man walking. He's only stalling these deals, looking for security guarantees for him, right? Not for Ukraine, right? Everything's about him. I think I've proved it beyond a reasonable doubt that he is an unreasonable person who loves being the center of attention. Instead of negotiating into the war, he's yapping it up with some Ukrainian reporter over at Politico, right? Peddling influence, right? Peddling Russophobia, because he's always got a friendly audience, a friendly ear. Everywhere he goes, he has his little glazers, right? They won't allow him to stand up to any criticism, right? But more and more, right? Russia, of course, Ukrainian attacks have killed Russian civilians. Russia has retaliated on, I believe, this is where we get into some of the drone strikes. And some of the drone strikes now are definitely believed to be revenge strikes. Recently, Russian Telegram reported that they killed a commander on the weekend. We don't know how important this guy is, but there's been no reports so far about any dead Ukrainian commanders. So it probably was, when it comes to the army, there's probably a lot of them. Right, commander is such a broad term, but normally the rank of commander is actually a naval officer. So an off-duty naval officer or someone, the Ukrainian Navy is pathetic beyond, most, like 530 something ships, and they're all on the bottom of the fucking ocean. Most of them are only small craft anyway, right? But sorry, Ukrainian Air Force, Air Command could be too, but no, they specifically said it was a commander, so it could be Navy. But yeah, it clearly shows that Russians are targeting Ukrainian officers in Ukraine, and that's what these civilian car attacks have been, right? They've been Ukrainian officers are being targeted by Russia in drone strikes. Now, that has not been confirmed. This is just my opinion, but right, again, France is in economic trouble. Macron is out there begging bailouts, a reduction in restructuring of debts, right? Getting longer term loans at lower interest rates to stave off. He's trying anything desperately to get to 2037. If someone knows why he won't step down and retire early, if anybody knows, perhaps it's a French law that he can't collect his wage, or that his own is a victim of his own laws that he has to wait. We don't know. So anybody knows why Macron, who it's just pride, so be it. But Macron is under pressure to resign from the Republic Assembly. So is Starmer. He's under pressure to retire. Now Merz is under pressure for Germany to rearm, but he's under attack because he wants nuclear weapons, and he's also under attack for letting Ukraine steal German technology, such as sending them the laser, them destroying it by pulling it apart, and this is, there's also cases against Russia and China for technology theft, and so the whole world ain't moral, okay? I think most of you know this by now, but this is for the newcomers. Anyway, I think I've kept you long enough. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. Support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.